No, it's a long holiday weekend, and the headlines coming out of Chicago, not pretty, including some headlines coming out of Springfield, not pretty. We had a stabbing incident that's under investigation, 2 people stabbed, and that, of course, is, some violence that we don't want to hear about in Springfield. But if you look up in Chicago, some of the headlines rather staggering, including a weekend where there were supposed to be peacekeepers out on the streets in Chicago, and $700,000 of state tax money was used for this program to try to interdict in violence in the city of Chicago for the long Memorial Holiday weekend. But here's a headline: Peacekeepers trying to prevent violence. That's one headline. Another one that came out over the weekend: a man in a peacekeeper's vest charged with robbing and beating a man in Little Village. Was this indeed one of those, quote, peacekeepers that was given grant dollars by the Pritzker administration in the city of Chicago? Also, some other headlines: 2 2-year-olds wounded in shootings just hours apart in Chicago. At least 11 killed, 45 wounded so far during the Memorial Weekend violence. So these, again, are just troubling headlines out of the city of Chicago. And there's also a headline out of State Representative Marty McLaughlin's office. He has issued a travel advisory from urging people to go to Chicago, not go to Chicago. So we'll review some of that a little bit later on. But to give us a better picture of what's going on the ground in Chicago, we're joined now by William J. Kelly, reporter at large in Chicago. William, thanks for taking time. Just alarming headlines coming out of the streets of Chicago over the weekend.
Thanks for having me, Greg. God bless you.
So what's going on? You heard me rattle off some of those headlines. A peacekeeper
Yes.
apparently arrested after allegedly beating up somebody and robbing them? What's going on?
It's very troubling, and it is truly an ominous start to the summer and to a start to Mayor Johnson's administration. He failed his first test as mayor. Let's just call it what it is. Safety is on the minds of every single Chicagoan. You can't walk down Michigan Avenue without looking over your shoulder or having your head on a swivel, trying to determine who's a possible threat or where you need to be alert to. And here we have Memorial Day weekend. It's not like it was a surprise to anyone. We have, this was some people, Chicagoans, even call it the beginning of murder season in Chicago. We have reported 50 shot, 10 dead. Now, first of all, I'd like to just begin by questioning those numbers. The Chicago police don't count shootings on the Dan Ryan, which, is the expressway that heads south of Chicago. Obviously, if people are dropped off at Christ Hospital, they don't count those shootings or fatalities towards the Chicago count. So, the numbers, the real disturbing, for me as a reporter, the most disturbing part is that we can't trust any of the numbers. We can't even trust who's a peacekeeper. As you mentioned, there's this absurd program to address violent crime in Chicago by having Kindler and spending money instead of spending money on actual police officers. We're spending, Pritzker and Mayor Johnson are spending money on this absurd peacekeeper program that has already produced the worst possible results. There's Oscar Montez, who was, he claims he's no longer a gang member. Personally, I like people who were never gang members being, involved with law enforcement. But at any rate, he claims he was a former gang member, but now, he finds himself being charged with a very serious beating and robbery of a motorist in the city of Chicago. Now, and what was the criteria to hire these peacekeepers? I'm going to investigate it, Greg, and I'm telling you, I will find out who hired these peacekeepers, what was the criteria, and how many other former gang members with criminal records are walking around with Peacekeeper vests in the city of Chicago.
Well, we'll definitely be checking back in with William J. Kelly on a regular basis. We were going to talk yesterday, but we were off for the Memorial Day holiday. But again, just to kind of look at these, at least 11 killed, 45 wounded. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, they say that the death toll was the highest since 2015 when 12 people were killed. But you've got the violence even happening very close to new mayor Brandon Johnson's doorstep, where a woman was found stabbed to death less than 2 blocks from his residence. So
Right.
obviously there's a whole host of problems, alarming problems in the city of Chicago.
Well,
But
you see,
stacked
there
on
you
top
go.
of that, William, you've got the migrant crisis that Chicago's facing. You've got, 10,000 migrants altogether over the past few months being in the city of Chicago. What's some of the latest you've seen on the streets there?
Well, trying to report on the migrant crisis is like trying to drink from a fire hose over here. First of all, I feel like I'm the only reporter in Chicago that's actually doing it. I head out to this migrant hotel. In fact, I walk past it at least once or twice a day, try to take pictures, try to interview migrants. Again, we have a migrant charged with, get this, stabbing another migrant. We're trying to track down all of the details on that. But, these are, the taxpayers of Chicago, of Illinois, really are paying, millions and millions of dollars again to try and, care for these migrants at a time when we already have more crime happening on the streets of Chicago than we can deal with. This is exactly the problem. We have a new mayor that I believe, as somebody who's lived in Chicago my whole life, I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I have a pretty good feel for the vibe of Chicago, and of course, Chicagoans contact me all the time from all areas of Chicago, police officers and just regular people, telling me that they feel that this new mayor has already sent a signal to the most violent criminals in the city of Chicago that he's their guy. And it's very, very hard for law-abiding citizens to take Mayor Johnson seriously when, before he was even elected, it was revealed that he wasn't even paying his own bills, city bills and other bills. And as you just stated, he can't even keep his own neighborhood safe. People are being shot and stabbed, within walking distance of his home. So I've always believed that that you have to take care of your own home first before you can go and take care of a city, for example, or a state or a country. You have to prove that you can somehow keep your own home, and this current mayor has even failed that test.
William J. Kelly with us. Real brief, just your response to State Representative Martin McLaughlin issuing a advisory here on his official website. Representative McLaughlin encourages summer visits to 52nd District, issues travel advisory to Chicago, and he says that the news related to crime coming out of Chicago each week is awful and heartbreaking for any hardworking Illinoisans with an expectation of public safety and criminal prosecution. Chicago's no longer the place for you. Carjackings, muggings, retail theft, and assaults are all up in Chicago. This is not a condemnation of the great people of Chicago, but rather a call to action for all the leaders of the city, county, and governor to solve these problems and finally return our flagship city to its prior status as a safe, world-class city for all its residents and visitors. Your thoughts? I mean, do you concur with Representative McLaughlin that people should avoid traveling to Chicago?
Well, as a lifelong Chicagoan, somebody who loves Chicago with all of my heart, I have to say, it breaks my heart to say this, but I have to agree with Marty McLaughlin. It's just absolutely bizarre what an upside down world we live in. The NAACP has issued a travel advisory to Florida, of all places, and Marty McLaughlin is issuing a travel advisory to Chicago. If I had to say who's right, as much as it breaks my heart, obviously Marty McLaughlin hit the nail on the head.
Well, William J. Kelly, greatly appreciate your time. As always, we'll check in with you next week to see if any of this gets resolved or if we're back reporting another troubling set of headlines about continued shootings and murders in the city of Chicago.
God bless you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. State Representative Marty McLaughlin issuing a travel advisory for Chicago, saying that, again, I'll read just some of this. He's advising his constituents from Lake, McHenry, Kane, and suburban Cook counties who value public safety to be fully aware of the issues before entering the city of Chicago. The news related to crime coming out of Chicago each week's awful, heartbreaking for the hardworking Illinoisans with an expectation of public safety and criminal prosecution. Chicago's no longer the place for you. Carjackings, muggings, retail theft, and assaults are all up in Chicago. So I want to hear from you at 217-629-7970. Your thoughts. Are you going to Chicago? Do you take these travel advisories seriously? 217-629-7970. Just a few comments on the YouTube channel. It says, let's see here. Some pretty interesting comments. Peacekeepers robbed and beat a citizen. So the governor has moved from coddling criminals to actually paying them. You can't make this stuff up. You've got another one saying, for sale, one large city, broken, best offer. Others saying that they've avoided Chicago for 2 years or more. Let's hear from you, 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Okay. You're on the air. Go ahead. Yep.
My opinion is, first of all, if you're going to travel to Chicago, you should always be aware of your surroundings and get a concealed carry permit, get training, learn how to use a gun. That way it gives you an edge because you cannot rely on law enforcement to protect you. That's the way our society's becoming, it seems like.
And you got to also be cognizant of the laws. You can't have a pistol concealed carry that carries more than 15 rounds in the magazine. That would be considered an expanded magazine and causing some concerns when it comes to possible violations of the state's gun ban. 217-629-7970. Let's get to a few more calls here before we go to the break. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, I was just curious as to why everybody is complaining about Chicago. They're not even in the top 10 most dangerous cities in the United States. Those all fall in red states. In fact,
are you talking about like the ratio of violent crime per capita or something?
Yeah. I think it's Arkansas has the most dangerous state. I don't remember exactly. But I just find it funny that you guys always call in, you talk about how dangerous Chicago is, when in reality, it's not even in the top 10.
Then why isn't it making headlines nationally? Even ABC News saying violence across the country, including in Chicago, and the headlines that we saw were 11 killed, nearly 50 shot. Where else has that happened over the Memorial Holiday weekend?
I don't know. That I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what we're focused on here. I appreciate the call, 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Boy, I don't know what that last caller was talking about, but I think he's way off. William J. Kelly, quick question. Do you know any legitimate media source that he actually reports for?
I think Newsmax he was on. He does hits there. I believe he had a radio show. I'm not sure of the status of that. But, I mean, listen, he's got the right of the free press, and he posts regularly within his own channels. Is that not
great? Then I'm in the media, too. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's your First Amendment right. Yeah, get a platform. The Internet allows you to do that. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Go ahead. You're on the air. Going once. Going twice. Go to the next line before the break. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning. The last caller was correct. There is proven more crime in the red states as far as cities. Another thing.
Are they red cities or are they blue cities, though?
There's still red states run by the governors, and this is just
But this is a blue state run by a Democrat and a blue city, Chicago. So I ask you, are these blue cities or are they red cities?
most of them are red that have the higher, crime in it.
Please point me to that stat. Where are you getting this? You got it right in front of you?
Thing,
Do you have that? Do you have that right in front of you?
The percentages of Springfield's per capita compared to Chicago?
Do you have that right in front of you?
Center of your attention.
Do you have that stat right in front of you? Give me the source, please.
No, I think the last caller proved it to you. I mean,
he didn't offer a source.
Neither do you. Neither do you.
And again, no, I'm ABC News reporting that you had more than 9 murders in Chicago over the holiday weekend.
And the right
National
always
news
needs a boogeyman
headlines
to run against. So that's what they do. Now crime is the boogeyman. So let's run against it.
All right.
I feel totally
So
safe.
what should happen? How should Chicago solve its violence problem?
Well, first of all, you need to start in the communities with the people. Maybe help with getting people jobs and educations, and start with, maybe in the schools, getting better schooling, better education, stuff like that. Maybe work programs to get people jobs that don't necessarily fit the mold to go to college.
These are some long-term things. What about adding more police and having prosecutors prosecute crime?
It's not going to change overnight by just saying, "Oh, let's arm everybody, let everybody walk around with a gun." That's not going to change anything either. So just look at Florida; everybody's walking around with a gun, and we just had a big shooting on a beach. I mean, come on, it's not the old West like it used to be. We have some people out there who just don't know how to handle themselves. People out there who are just mentally challenged. So not everyone, should be able to just carry a gun around without being checked or processed properly.
Got you down. All right, 217-629-7970. I know I said that was the last caller before the break, but one last one, I promise. All right, real quick, please. Good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Yeah, I'm from Chicago. I'm just calling in to, offer a solution here. I've lived here my whole life, and just looking around at everything I do, work in the downtown area, and it's a scary place to go these days, and you don't know what's going on. You can't even conceal carry on public transit, be it the CTA or the Metro. It's just a very terrible place to be. But the solutions, I don't know. I mean, should be up to the residents. Should be a collaboration of them and leaders of all religions or faiths or just different backgrounds. And, this disaster with the mayor, with the Peacekeepers, I mean, what a joke. I mean, just sitting there and a guy robs another person. I mean, what are they supposed to be doing out here? I mean,
well, and they were supposed to be able to try to interdict violence, but we saw the highest numbers of shootings and fatalities since the record in 2015. So apparently the Peacekeepers have some more work to do to keep the peace. I appreciate you calling in from Chicago. Got to take a break, though. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk Now 735. Let's check headlines. 92.